Well, welcome back to Bloom. This is Brian Wren, and we're so glad that you could join us. Let's jump right in. We're at week 5 of Bloom, and for those who've been following, we hope that your experience has really enriched your marriage and taken it to a deeper level in the dialogue that is promoted, and really helped you gain greater awareness that's led to some action. As we jump to slide 2 tonight that kicks off session 5 here, it's as simple as this. You're either in a doom cycle or a bloom cycle. And we've all been there. We all have the potential to be there, and that's the reality. That's part of the reason we created Bloom, was to help people realize that you're either dooming or blooming. And this can happen in a morning, in an afternoon, in a day, in a week, in a season, if it's not really looked at long enough and analyzed, that you can stay in this doom cycle way too long. And so we wanted to give people bloom elements so that they would be able to get out of these doom cycles. Just for review, why we doom, and as we've been looking at it each week, and slide 3 really goes into this, we actually doom based on the fact that we're made this way. And our desire, it says in the Bible, for a woman is to control her husband, and for the husband to rule over. So there's this internal battle that causes a great sense of tension, that causes the doom right away. And then there's outside forces. And in the end, if we don't stay focused on our oneness, those outside forces and this internal conflict create this true dooming cycle. The bloom cycle, on the other hand, as we've said all along, occurs when we sustain oneness. And oneness is sustained by submitting to one another, really implementing the nutrients that we've talked about over and over again. And this week we'll be talking about the 5th nutrient of seeking a greater purpose. But when we truly focus on sustaining oneness and adding in the bloom nutrients by submitting to those and to one another, and then guarding our marriages and really making sure the hedge is strong so that finances, family, health, career, addictions are all put in their place, then we bloom. And the reason why we want this, slide 5, it's why we were made. We were made to pattern ourselves after God so that we could be mirrors that reflect His glory. And when we move on to slide 6, what you'll see is the 5 key nutrients that if we add these in: commit to love, cherish and respect, be gracious and forgive, choose the right words, seek a greater purpose, as we'll talk about tonight, then we truly do bloom. And we review that because that's the key. That's the key. And we hope by the end of this 5 weeks with us that you're able on a napkin to jot down these 5 nutrients and sit with a friend at Starbucks, Pete's Coffee, wherever it may be, is your really place to hang out. And when you talk with a friend, help them identify where they are not blooming, and then maybe pass on some of the tools, and for you to be able to easily identify that in your own marriage. Tonight, as we move in to seek a greater purpose in this session 7, I want you to see some signs that you're lacking this 5th nutrient. And this 5th nutrient is so vital, as are all of them. But in this 5th nutrient, if you're lacking it, here's what you'll experience: a lack of spiritual integration. You're not connecting spiritually. That could formally be not being able to pray together, or actually it could be just not being able to talk about spiritual things together, not being comfortable talking about God's greater plan for your life. You could also be lacking living into your passion, maybe holding each other back from living into your passion, maybe because it's not identified, maybe because you haven't felt the freedom within your marriage to do that, or your family. Or this one, feeling a lack of greater purpose for your marriage. Is this all there is? We just live together day to day? We just raise these kids? There's got to be a better reason, a greater reason for all of us being together. So maybe you lack a greater purpose. And possibly you definitely lack the 5th nutrient if you really haven't sat down and gotten serious about clarifying values and goals. And this gives you some window into where we would head again in this nutrient tonight. So we're getting focused tonight on seeking a greater purpose. And as we do that tonight, I think it's important that we're reminded of these other nutrients. And just to get a quick flash at where you are with these other nutrients, because seeking a greater purpose is important, but look at slide 8. Where are you after 5 weeks at filling each other's love tank and truly committing to their love language? I know for myself it's vital that I hit my wife's love language as quality time. It's showing up on time, it's giving her time, and acts of service. That is doing things for us. Honey, will you go up and get my car charger out of the car, or phone charger out of the car? Honey, will you help me out with the kids here? Will you bathe the boys while I take care of the girls? This acts of service. And it's also important that she meets my words and physical touch. Slide 9, just a reminder, how are you doing at cherishing and respecting? If you meet the love languages, LL equals CR, you're more likely to be in the bloom cycle. But are you treating each other and seeking truly to cherish your mate, the wife, and truly respect your husband? And so are you responding or are you reacting? Reacting leads to dooming, quick reactions. When you respond, you choose to love. How's your grace and forgiveness? Slide 10. Without grace and forgiveness, oneness is so lost. The wall goes straight up. Are you being gracious? Is failure allowed? Mistakes allowed? And when a mistake is made, is reconciliation completed through a forgiveness process? And so with grace, walls come down. There's an attitude that it must be in a home and a relationship that's the approach is grace, not law. And is there a set reconciliation process? I hope by now you've nailed down your reconciliation process. How do you break down the wall when the wall's between you? You've got to have a reconciliation process. Do you know what your spouse most needs when you fail her or him so that you can reconnect? And then choosing the right words. How you doing with choosing the right words? It goes back to responding, reacting. Are you really listening, clarifying thoughts, dealing with the tsunami of thoughts and feelings and swirls within you, or does it just come right out and you react and tell off, stand off, get arrogant in either of those two upper blocks? Or do you withdraw, give up, and passively aggressive hold on to your agenda? Using the right tone and choosing the right time, and choosing the actual words is vital here. And then often prayer and finding compromise and then going back through nutrient 3 of forgiveness is vital. So that's just a review because all of these are important. But tonight as we jump into page 12, you'll see the dooming myth surrounding seeking a greater purpose. Most people believe this, that God's purposes for marriage will naturally evolve. That, if we're together, it'll just make sense what we're supposed to do. And I would say that's not very true. That God's purpose for your marriage must be sought after and intentionally lived into. And for most couples, they don't do this. And so tonight's about getting really deliberate about a few things, but things that help us get really focused on what we're about. So let's dig in here. Look what couples who gain this nutrient really experience. They gain a more natural integration of God into their life. I grew up in a home where there was a disconnect. God wasn't really in the home and integrated. It was just a Sunday thing. Those who seek a greater purpose and incorporate this nutrient really begin to naturally integrate. They identify roadblocks that hold them back from doing spiritual practices such as praying, reading the Bible together, having devotionals, having spiritual discussions. They really identify those roadblocks and start to break through them. They really begin to identify what each other are truly passionate about. I know my wife's truly passionate about being compassionate and truly helping those who cannot help themselves. Meanwhile, my passion is doing what I'm doing right now, helping folks who actually can't help themselves, but just giving them the tools to do it. And how about identifying a specific purpose statement? Couples who get this nutrient convey that they go do some good work and clarify a true purpose statement and values. So I'm talking about pen to paper, words written down. I know one couple, their marriage purpose statement is, we live to please God and show his love to others. And then they have 9 values: pray, care, share, obedient, humble, loving, grateful, truthful, respectful. And that's actually for their family. And it's the standard for their family and their relationship. That's what they talk about at dinner. That's what they talk about as a standard for conduct. That's what they discipline from, affirm from. That's what they go after. You can see these other ones identifying couples who get this nutrient embedded in. They identify short and long-term goals, and they identify passions and things that they just have a holy discontent about that they have to do something about, something that makes their heart just go, I've got to go after that. And so realize this as we slip on to slide 14 here, that the Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. So while there might seem to be a lot of pressure in coming up with stuff for this nutrient, what I would say to you is that the Lord has put something on your heart and in your head that you are passionate about and that there's a purpose for. And when I sit a kid down, I can ask him these questions. Hey, what do you really like to do? What are you really into? What do you seem to care about? And kids just speak from their heart. Adults have done themselves a disservice and give the right answers versus what's the answer within, the deep answer that's within. And for all of us on slide 15, what you'll see is the following. Slide 15 shows that for each of us, we do have a general purpose that's the same. We really do. And that general purpose is the character we're called to. The fruit of the Spirit, the Galatians 5:22, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And what's neat is God will work in us then. So every man, every woman is called to the same thing, being a reflection or being a mirror of God, as it tells us in 2 Corinthians in this passage. And then here's where we each have a very specific, unique accomplishment that we're called to do, and things were planned before us to do. And because we're his masterpiece, we each actually then have a different masterpiece that will manifest itself from us. And he's created us anew through Christ to do this. And so for some, it's to be that accountant. For others, it's to paint a painting. But in the end, we each have a very specific work. Some it's to work with people in third world countries. For others, it's to raise kids in a first world country. But it's interesting to talk about as a couple, how am I supposed to become more like Christ in character? And then am I really living into the accomplishments he has for me, which are tied to the passions of our heart? If you ask yourself what you're most passionate about, there's a direct correlation, I believe, between your heart and what you're supposed to be doing. And if you jump to slide 19, jump 4 slides ahead, you'll see a quote by Buechner, Frederick Buechner, that says this best. The place God calls you is the place where your deep joy meets the world's deep need. The place God calls you is the place where your deep joy meets the world's deep need. And if you go back to slide 16, what you will see is the following. A picture of a couple, Jim and Jan, exhibit signs that they really need this nutrient. And you know you really need this nutrient when the character of God is not exuding itself from you two. So what that means is the following. You're really lacking Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit. You're lacking self-control, patience, gentleness, faithfulness. I'd encourage you to open up to Galatians 5:22 as part of the exercise and go, wow, which one of these characteristics of Christ is God wanting me to live into? And then they're not living into it when or exhibiting the signs of Nutrient 5 when they're really not doing what God's called them to. There's a great dissatisfaction with regards to what you're doing as a job or even what you're doing in your volunteer work. Again, God wants us to live into the desires of our heart, where the deep joy meets the world's deep need. And he wants us to move into that. And what I find is couples who aren't living into their passion or the accomplishments God had or the being, there's a great breakdown in their own oneness because they're dissatisfied. But meanwhile, couples are. Take an example like Wayne and Casey, who really found oneness through integrating Nutrient 5 in their marriage. They identify their flawed people, need to go to this standard, and what they found is this. They began to grow in those areas, and they began to incorporate prayer to help them grow in those areas so that they could become more like Christ in love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, and those attributes that are listed out in Galatians 5:22. And they also then had high regard for each other in seeking out the work that God had each of them to do. And so in this example, Casey really liked to work with kids, and Wayne wasn't actually into kids at all. And early on in their marriage, they didn't even have kids, but Wayne freed up Casey to work with kids. And Wayne loved to build stuff, and he would tinker and tinker. And Casey came to the realization, hey, Wayne likes to do that. He's good at that. That's what he's good at. And so let's free him up. And you could see them on a Mexico mission trip thriving. She'd be with the kids, in the village, and he'd be on the building project. And that was satisfying to them. This also could play out in their vocation, where, he developed his own construction company, and she actually became a teacher. And that's living into and blooming into and regarding that, and speaking that out to each other, and allowing each other to flourish in that, not holding each other back. Again, just what Frederick Buechner, the place God calls you is the place where your deep joy meets the world's deep need. What's so interesting, slide 19 shows that people seldom hit what they don't aim at. And if you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it every time. So the reality is, I feel we need to really sit and ponder these things. Sit and ponder, what are the passions in your heart? What really are those? What are the dreams? Sit down and put some goals together. And then even speak to the bigger picture. What's the purpose of our marriage? Let's attach a verse to that. And what are some values we could go after? And slide 20 really is the bedrock of the homework to help you move in towards getting serious about this work that we're calling you to do in Bloom, seeking a greater purpose. And how that plays out is the following. We encourage folks to be prayerfully and intentionally in clarifying the following things. The first, sit down and ponder a statement. The purpose of our marriage or family, for those who have kids already, I'd say just call it your family. The purpose of our family is what? And wrestle through that. It's a hard statement. I'll give you one example. One family says the purpose of our family is we live to please God and show His love to others. And I've heard many other statements that are even more specific than that. And then to find a passage around that becomes the core passage that you live by. I know a family that chose 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8, and a lot of people go, oh, that's that love passage. But that love passage hangs in their stairwell. Their purpose statement is embedded in a painting that includes that passage, and that becomes the place where they bring their family back to say, hey, this is the standard. Love, it's another passage on love, similar to in Galatians, but a little different twist. This defines love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Does not envy. Does not boast. It's not proud. It's not rude. Goes on to say many other things about love, but becomes a great standard for a family to live by. And then to incorporate values. Values, what are those? Values are actually the being, the character that you want your spouse and you or your family to live by. Pray, care, share. We want to be a family who prays, who cares, who shares. A family that's obedient, that's humble and loving. A family that's grateful, truthful, and respectful. Can you imagine if you have those out and that's how you discipline a kid and that's how you affirm a kid? Hey, Johnny, I need you to be more respectful with your words. Hey, today, who could we be more caring towards? Hey, this weekend, let's share some of our weekend with some other folks. Hey, you're not really being honest right now, and we stand to being truthful in this family. I need you to go hang out in your room and come back when your heart's right, and let's try again. See how the values can play out? Works for a husband and a wife, too. Hey, I thought we agreed to respect each other. I don't feel respected right now in the way you're speaking to me. Hey, we agreed that we're going to be about compassion, and I just don't feel like we're really compassionate about other people. We're living a selfish life right now. Or, hey, the reason why we went on that trip, that lived out our value of compassion. And whether we do that in the big things or the little things, we can point back to these values. Passions and dreams, I encourage couples to sit down and really discuss these out. What are you really passionate about? What gives you life to be involved in? And what's the holy discontent? What's the thing that makes you sad and want to scream? I had a friend who, it was sex trafficking. That just brought him to tears when he thought about his daughter potentially being abused in that manner. And that was a holy discontent. And his martial arts skills and his passion for justice got him involved in that. It was very, very life-giving. What's your passion? I have a passion to lower the divorce rate. That's probably my holy discontent. My wife has a passion to really help the impoverished in a long-term way, not just in a short-term way. What are your dreams? Dreams can be, things well beyond what you're currently, the situation you're in. And then goals can be established to get there. What are short-term goals with money, education, how you want dinners to be at your home, family vacations? What are those things? Again, if you go back to slide 19, people seldom hit what they don't aim at. If you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it. There's not a perfect way to have the discussion on page 20. The question is whether you'll have the discussion at all. So I'd encourage you to go after it, and it's the primary homework we're calling you to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And as you seek a greater purpose, prayer is a huge part of this, and slide 21 really speaks to this. And prayer will help reveal God's purposes. If we sit with God long enough, or even short term, He can reveal the way He wants us to go. I love Psalm 32:8. I'll guide you along the best pathway for your life. I'll advise you, and I'll watch over you. He'll guide you. It's the best pathway. He'll advise you. He'll watch over you. He has a greater purpose for us. It's all over the Bible, over many of the passages I showed you today. The key question is to ponder, why don't we? Why wouldn't we include Him? And this is where I'd encourage you as a couple, why don't we pray together? What holds me back individually? I know for me, I let other urgencies in, or I let life get me too tired, and then I lack the discipline to do it. Some lack a plan. Some lack the skill, need to learn how. Some, it's just flat-out pride. Others, it's questioning whether He's even there. But I know this, for couples that truly seek after Him, and are seeking a greater purpose, prayer becomes a way for Him to reveal the longings of the heart and the direction that they should go. So as you head into this work tonight, I would encourage you on slide 22 to spend some time praying together and then discuss and list the following. This is just going back after the purpose statement, the family passage, the values. Some couples need to get away to do this work. I've had couples take a retreat and do this, go away for 2 nights and carve out a couple hours each day and knock it out over meals or afternoons. I've had other couples do it overnight. I've had other couples do it individually, come together and share it. It's got to be a collaborative process in some way. But in the end, this is what I know. In the end, those who seek a greater purpose find greater satisfaction and oneness within their marriage and do things that they only believe God can help them do. And in the end, He gets much greater glory. So as we head out of Bloom of this final session, it's never the end. What's great with Bloom is there's always coaching sessions that you can jump in once a month after you've done your 5 weeks of looking at the initial bloom material. So check the website for when those times will be. And if you have questions, let us know via the web or email. And consider the bonus exercise. In the next 6 weeks, write a note of recommitment to your spouse. Just whatever comes to your heart. So we're grateful you joined us again. And as you go tonight, may your marriage bloom.